Gather us in the lost and forsaken. Gather us in the blind and the lame.
All right, let's do this. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another session of the Uper Farmer Cigar Garage Talk. How's everyone doing? I'm doing good tonight. Here pretty soon, the time is going to change. It means the weather's warming up. We're actually having a good maple syrup run going right now, which is excellent. Second year doing it. Learned a lot of lessons that first year. We're doing pretty good this year. Already got half gallon in the bag, canned up, ready to go. 5 beautiful pint-sized jars. Gonna be delicious. Hold us off hopefully for a few months. Again, the season's not done yet. I'm anticipating we're at least going to double, if not triple that. We'll see what the season kind of has a mind of its own. Tonight, we are smoking the wonderful COA Sessions. Sit, smoke, chill. I like the saying. The cigar is definitely, it's a Nicaraguan, very dark wrapper, very harsh cigar. Not my favorite, that type, of course. The cigar is actually pretty good tonight. I'm actually enjoying this. Usually I'm not a fan of the darker Nicaraguan cigars, but again, got this one in a sampler. So we'll see how it goes. Should be good. For the drink, we're having Nitro Irish Stout. Never had this Colorado Ale. Alright, that kind of scares me when it says it's an ale. A good nitro sound. In case you don't know, companies will use nitrogen instead of carbon dioxide to carbonate or to, I guess, aerate their beer. It makes the bubbles a lot finer, makes it a little bit smoother of a texture when you drink it. Some people say it affects the drink. A little bit of head on there. Not great, especially for a nitro. Let's give her a whirl, though. Oh, that's definitely a nitro, though. It is smoother. It's a lot of palate feel more than it is a what you'd see or describe as a change in flavor. Just makes it a little bit smoother going down, which is nice. The bubbles are a lot smaller. And some say it keeps better with the nitro carbonation. So anyhow, away from beer, away from cigars, away from maple syrup. As you can probably tell from the title, this is a special episode. This one is going to be well outside of the run of the episodes I've been doing. I'm kind of building quite a library, actually, of episodes, which it's a lot of fun. I love doing these. I love making them. I look forward to making them. Again, I'm doing it for me. Viewership's really low, which is fine. I don't mind that at all. But tonight's episode is a special one because this will air on a very special 1-year anniversary. And that's the 1-year anniversary when our governor put us into lockdown due to the beer flu, the crown flu, the certain name in China flu you can't use anymore, apparently. That's right. This episode, I'm going to stop avoiding talking about it and presenting about it and mentioning it. And let's have it out. So on the 15th, on Monday, it will officially be 1 year since the governor shut everything down. Schools, travel. That started our 2 weeks to flatten the curve. The 10th of March was the first patient with COVID hit Michigan. And then it took a few days for them to get all the executive orders and declaration of emergencies and whatnot in order so that she could get her power. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's rewind the clock. Let's talk about what happened. And this is kind of from my perspective, my experience with it. This is kind of my diary entry into this whole hoopla that happened. So, unlike the rest of the world, I kind of was not surprised about this beer flu for a couple of reasons. One, once you ever work in public health, and as long as you like them, if you leave because you hate it, I suppose, you kind of always keep your nose in it. So I kept up with the different newsletters, the different CDC briefings that I was allowed to. I lost a lot of them when I stopped working in the health department. They kind of take away a lot of your clearance to access CDC documents and whatnot. But the ones I could keep, I kind of kept up with. And November, December area, there was a quick report about a virus that was found in China. Not much was mentioned about it. It was just mentioned that it was the crown type. I'm trying not to use the word because the censors will pick it up and I'll have a bunch of warnings over this video. But the crown virus was found in a province in China. Now, I knew about these family of viruses, again, from my time as an emergency preparedness coordinator for a health department. And yeah, they can be pretty bad, but usually we can nip them in the rear. I was teaching a paramedic class at the time, so I took a second to kind of talk to them about this family of virus and what it meant and what it could do and other diseases that we've seen throughout the world that fall into this category, whether that's SARS and the MERS. So we had a good discussion about what it was, what it wasn't. They asked me if I was concerned or worried about it. I told them that I get these briefings, everything from rotaviruses going through the school to hantavirus out west to even the plague. You know, the bubonic plague is still alive and well in the United States. It's just mostly found in rodents out in Colorado, New Mexico, that area out there. It pops up from year to year. So I told him, you know, it's something to just keep an eye on, keep in the back burner. Not really a big deal, but, you know, it's out there. So we talked about mass vaccinations. We talked about the widespread illnesses. We talked about H1N1, the last one that we really dealt with as a nation. Good class, good teachable moment. Christmas came and went, and during this time, my wife was teaching teaching English to Chinese kids. Online, of course. And she kind of, in January, mentioned to me she was tracking something quite odd. So I kind of pressed her on it. So what do you mean? What do you mean odd? She said, well, you know, a lot of her students, in the Chinese culture, education, as many of you probably know, is highly regarded. But a lot of them were missing these classes. And these aren't cheap classes, mind you. These are quite expensive classes that these kids have to, the parents have to pay for. They were missing them. They were sick. A lot of them were wearing masks indoors. They were coughing a lot. And then that transitioned to a lot of the kids taking classes inside hospitals. Clearly hospital waiting rooms, even rooms themselves, treatment rooms. And sure enough, when I pushed my wife, a lot of these kids were from this, that she noted this in, were from this magical province that, again, we're not allowed to mention. So that's when a few news stories broke. Nothing big, mind you, just sniffles. It's all kind of reported as. And I told my wife, you know what, I'm curious. I'm gonna go do some searching. So again, I could prescribe to conspiracy theories, which is a dangerous thing to do in this. You got to kind of read between the lines with them. Um, and then also, I know a lot of people from the public health spectrum. And pretty quickly, I was able to paint a picture where, well, this is not we've got this under control. This is definitely an out of control thing that's going on. February rolls around, and we're starting to get a little bit more news. The idea that it's going to be here in the States, the pushback about travel restrictions starts being talked about. And I kind of see the red flags glaring. I saw them in January, and from January and February, we started kicking some more preps into high gear. Now, mind you, we're always prepping. We always have been, always will be. But when you see disaster on the horizon, you're able to get that early warning. You take advantage of it. You jump into high gear, increase your food surplus, buy a few extra masks, buy some hand sanitizer. Not like tons. We weren't buying cases and crates and pallets full of this crap. We had a pretty good stockpile, but you use it. That's our principle. The food stores we have, we use them so they don't go bad. It's not something we do once and forget about it. It's constant in our mind. So we're constantly rotating through stuff. And sometimes, you get a check that's a little lean. So maybe eat a little bit more of that, your food supplies. You don't exactly, you forgot to put toilet paper on the shopping list, so you dip into the poop and paper stash. Well, we weren't going to do that. We bought up again, not tons. We didn't have carts and carts and carts full, and like you saw on television where people have, multiple shopping carts full of toilet paper and are punching each other in the face for it. We bought up enough because we did figure that we'd have family and friends who would probably run low and come knocking on our door, which did happen. So March hit, and that's when everything got shut down. Spring break got extended at the university I was working at. And we went to high gear at the university trying to figure out how can we continue to do education. How can we continue our paramedic and EMT classes and all that. Well, and I was working out the systems. I'd already been pushing the university I worked at to get online. We had the capabilities. They were built out. We had the systems in place. We had the procedures. We had protocols. We had done test run classes where we practiced and delivered some classes online. We were more ready than many of the other universities, at least the paramedic programs. I'll be very specific. And I worked really hard before all this happened because that's what I saw was in the future, was online education. Now I look back and laugh how right I was. Well, with the shutdown and some other factors, about a week or so after after the executive orders went into place, the college realized they were going to be strapped for cash. Again, some other stuff was going on in the background. I was asked to step down from my position and leave the college. So, yeah, that happened. It was surprising and not at the same time. They were able to save money by giving my position to another faculty member. And again, there was some other background issues going on, so I found myself unemployed. I got in, thankfully, just before a lot of the mass unemployment hit. I still had the runaround from the unemployment agency. That was fun. But I decided to go on that, take a little bit of a breather, a break, refocus. And I think I lasted about a week before the news got out that I was now off the unemployed, and I had 3 job offers. All 3 involved some ambulance time and some degree of teaching. So I kind of hummed and hawed and went back and forth. But there was one thing I was never able to give my kids. I was never able to give them a summer vacation. Even this teaching job that was supposed to be, that I went into thinking I was going to get summers off, it turned out I was dead wrong. So I promised my kids when we moved for this teaching job that I'd be around for the summers, and it wasn't going to happen. So I said, you know what? I talked to the different ambulance companies, and at that time, what you saw was, nationwide, ambulance calls just went to almost zero. The frequent flyers weren't going in because they didn't want to get sick with something for real. You had people putting off surgeries. You had individuals who were so scared to go in the ER and possibly catch the beer flu that they stayed home. And some of them actually had worse outcomes because they didn't get the treatment they needed. So I told a couple of companies, I'm gonna hold off, at least a month or two, give my kids a little bit of a summer vacation, and then I'd hit it. I'd come back, work for them, and that was my plan. I was going to jump back on the rig, be part of the boots on the ground response team. Hoorah. I also started to look into some of the contract medic stuff. Different states who weren't so lucky were having these really high infection rates. We're looking for medics and willing to pay big bucks to have you go do 2 weeks to 2 months, paying you top dollar plus per diem, putting you up in fancy hotels. There are some neat stories. You jump online and look up some of those. People who went cross country and whatnot. One of them, went to go work for New York, put his wedding on hold. So the people of New York were so moved by his story, they actually got married in Times Square. An officiator coming to officiate was on the big Megatron TVs. Pretty cool. I was ready for that. I was ready to jump back in, get my gloves bloody and my boots dirty. But at about that time, my mother-in-law had a massive cardiac event, and I mean massive. So, yeah, I ended up, my wife ended up having to go take care of her mother. Well, I was on unemployment. It was going to be tight. It was going to be rough, but we could make it work. So my wife went off to go take care of her mother. I got to be stay-at-home dad, single parent for about a month, which was a unique and interesting time. It ended up being more than a month because she'd have to go back. She'd come back for a week, then go for a week, back and forth to help with her mother. It was a very interesting time for me. I'd always been the one to leave her behind. She was more equipped for taking care of our kids kind of solo. Mind you, the longest I was ever gone was for a week. So a whole month, that was interesting. I do cherish that time. That was an amazing time with my children. Really got to connect with them more. We did a lot of fun stuff. So during this time, I mean, the question is, were you scared of getting the flu? I'm still not scared of getting it. I've got a stuffy nose right now. I know it's from allergies, but I'm playing it safe, playing by the rules. But during this summertime, also, when everything was kind of going tits up in our country, we started having a lot of violence. A lot of even up here in the quiet UP, there was demonstrations and protests and threats of violence. So, all right, started carrying a gun with me on my hip, and I carried concealed almost all the time. But I started open carrying, that visual deterrent, which was neat. Got to have lots of interesting conversations with sales clerks and whatnot. Thankfully, that kind of slowed down a little bit. My mother-in-law started to stabilize, and of course the threat of unemployment running out started hitting, so I needed to start looking for a job. Contacted the ambulance companies again. They were, of course, more than happy to give me a quote-unquote interview. One guy said, "Your interview is right now. Do you have your license?" "Yep." "Do you have your certifications?" "I do." "Okay, we'll see you on Monday." Well, I ended up not going on the rig. I was had a couple of long conversations with my children, and they were very scared of me going back on the rig. The two oldest remember Dad's ambulance accidents, remember me getting injured. They apparently also heard some scary stories of close calls I had. And it got my two oldest kind of got in a bit of a panic. They did not want Dad back on the ambulance, especially during the time of extraordinary times. Unprecedented, that's really unprecedented times. Now again, I wasn't scared of catching it. One, I'm not in the risk categories, except for the vices, of course. This one might kind of put me on that line there, but I also knew that I knew my disease protocols. I knew my ability to protect myself from getting contaminated. I was very good with that. I dealt with special pathogens a lot when I was on the ambulance. I took transfers with stuff that made this beer flu look like a joke. Some of the patients I took. So I knew I was capable of protecting myself. I was very realistic about my limitations of the equipment. I knew how to properly wear a mask, properly wash up, glove up, gown up, pappers, the whole 9 yards. But, oh, excuse me. But looking in your kid's eyes and just seeing a sense of dread, it's not fun. So I decided not to go back to the rig. I decided to look for other employment, which I ended up finding. None surprise to people who know me. I got back in my roots of public health, disaster response, and preparedness, and actually currently still work with the team doing some disaster response with the state. I'm working with, I said it, I'll have to bleep that out. Working on that response, more at the administrative level, behind the scenes paperwork and forms and reports and tracking and research. All the stuff I hate. But, damn it, I'm good at it, unfortunately. I know that crap very well. So, I was picked up It was nice. I could work from home, which that was a trip. I learned a lot about myself. I learned that I missed the drive into work. Which, if any of you guys know me, after my ambulance accidents and a few things, I'm calmed down a lot on the roads, but I'd get a little skittish when there was bad weather. But it turned out it was weird. I'd sign into work. We actually joked about it. I used to always call my wife when I got to work. So the first week of me working from home, I got on my cell phone and called her. I mean, she's just like a few, probably 20, 30 feet down the hall. She thought it was cute. It was kind of a little romantic. Like, oh, that's sweet. I'll get to work. But yeah, I found when I got off of work and went straight to go and take care of my kids, I was a lot shorter with them, which was weird because during the summer, it was just an amazing time. I got to really connect with my kids again, which was awesome. So I was kind of shocked. It was brought to my attention months later, just recently actually, from recording this video, that drive meant more to me than I actually realized, and I actually gave it credit for. It was my time to focus, and I'd say a lot of prayers, because again, I was nervous driving. Say a lot of prayers and whatnot, but I jumped straight from work to taking care of kids. That was an interesting revelation. I never would have guessed that. I never would have guessed that I enjoyed that drive. I needed it on a very personal level, and it came about because the state has you go through a bunch of wellness counseling. Good for us. We're kind of hitting that out of the park. I'll give that to the state of Michigan. We have a Stay Well line where you can go and talk to counselors 24/7, and then all their employees who are part of the response. We're not mandated, but you have to show up to these talks and listen to them, which is great. I'm a huge fan of that. The psychiatric medicine, that'll be a talk here coming up about some of my psychiatric problems. And no, I was very happy to actually go to one. And I talked to the lady who was presenting. Kind of told her what was going on in my family. And she asked, well, how long have you been working, as a professional or going to work? It's like, well, going on over 20 years now. Okay. Well, in that 20 years, how long of a commute would you have? Oh boy, anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour and 10. She said, okay. She said, there's your problem. That was your routine. That was who you were. Wow. And she explained it. She explained some stuff I could do to help, and I put that in, and it's been helping. To kind of give myself a minute away from work, away from my family, not because I don't want to be with my family, because I need that time. I've had it for 20 years. And I needed it. It was interesting. I learned a lot about my psyche during that one. I'm very proud of that. I'm glad I had that experience. So, moving on from there, we still in the midst of the beer flu. One of the big things that I really am depressed about is how our Catholic Church has dealt with the response. That really, hold on a second, I've got to fix my cigar real quick. That should be better. Like I said, the church really kind of let me down. Canceled all the big masses. Easter just didn't happen. In-person church didn't happen. We went to this online church, video church. The bishops came out and absolved everyone from their obligation to go to Mass. Told priests they couldn't officiate over funerals, do prayer services. Now, as I've talked about, I'd never force anyone to be told they need to risk their life. I did a whole video about public servants, and priests are 100% public servants. They're amazing individuals. I couldn't even, it's something I couldn't do. It's an amazing thing what Catholic priests are able to do. I take my hats off to them. Every one of them's a better person than I ever will be. But we've had other mass diseases and more contagious and deadly diseases. And the church has always been the cornerstone, the rock in these uncertain times. I always look towards Saint Damien. If you ever want a story of an amazing individual who is inspirational, Saint Damien is an amazing person. He's passed now, of course. That's how you become a saint. You can't be a saint while you're living. He was an individual who we used to take people with leprosy and you ship them off to islands, little leper colonies. And he heard about the living conditions at one of these leper colonies. And it disturbed him. He could not believe the conditions these people, these individuals were living in. So he signed his own death warrant. He moved on to one of these leper colonies. Writing letters back to home. He got his home parish to raise what would, in today's money, be millions and millions and millions of dollars for irrigation to build the church. These people who dealt with death on a daily basis, he got them to redefine life and redefine death. When someone died, it was a celebration. Gave communion, offered Mass, got food, got clean water, brought dignity to these people's lives. Unsurprisingly, of course, he got leprosy. Ultimately succumbed to leprosy and died. Became in my opinion, he was a martyr. He died for his faith, but he was not officially marked as a martyr. I get the rationale behind that, of course, but he was martyred, in my opinion. And he became a saint. Saint of leprosy and other obscure diseases or deadly diseases. We won't have a saint of the beer flu, because the church won't let anyone. They wouldn't even let them go give last rites, anointing of the sick to these people who were dying in hospitals. It was horrifying. It still is. It rocks me to my core. I remember when the bishop finally allowed in-person masses. You better believe I did all the requirements. You got to mask up and wash and sterilize your hands. And the church we went to, they cordoned off the pews to the point that me and my 6 kids couldn't sit together. We had to sit in 2 separate pews even. And it was just an amazing experience being able to go back. It was sad and horrifying in one sense, but in the other, I found myself crying during the whole Mass, which I hadn't really done much ever before. I don't think I've ever really cried during a Mass or any other religious service, but to finally be in the presence of God, Jesus, to get his body, because again, they got rid of the wine, or got rid of the blood, the chalice, but to finally receive the Eucharist and receive the body of Christ, I sat there and cried. It was amazing to finally have that back in my life. It's unfortunate and sad the way it went, that we did have to lose that integral part of being a human. Now again, of course, we pray a lot, and God is with us every day. Where two or more is gathered, He is there. We've always got a lot of praying going on in our house. It's just some kind of a cornerstone. But that Mass, the Mass for a Catholic, it means something. It's very integral to our being. So we're now starting to phase back in Masses, and they're getting a little bit better, a little more relaxed. We bring in 8 people into a church with limited seating. You kind of get the old, you shouldn't be here, especially kids. Bring kids during this time. Yeah, they don't look at you too pleasantly. Got some stink eyes put towards us. It's very unfortunate how the church handled this. Again, I'm not saying force the priests to put their lives at risk. Just like I wouldn't say to put a paramedic or firefighter's life at risk. But there were ones who wanted to because they felt called to. The church actively said, no, you can't do it. I won't let you. It's crazy, in my opinion. Absolutely crazy. But it is what it is. Still very Catholic. I'm very faithful. Just you can be upset with the people of the church. The church itself, I'm very proud of. But the people kind of let us down. So what else has happened? One, on that note, I do feel extremely blessed. God and Jesus really did look out for me and my family during this time. A lot of things lined up. Had I still been working for the university and my mother-in-law got sick, I could have taken a whole month off, plus a few subsequent weeks when my wife had to go over. That's an amazing blessing. Everything happens for a reason. We may not know it, we might not agree with it, but things work out. God will take care of you. But other things happened too that also made me depressed for our country and for humans in general. Travesty, tragedy, mass disasters. If you've never worked in disasters at all, disaster response, you're not going to know what this is like, but it is in our darkest hour normally as humans, especially as Americans, we pull together. You have people who are, the mortal enemies of each other, call each other up and check on people in a disaster. I thought for sure, maybe I hoped for sure, that this time was going to bring our country together, and it didn't. It ripped us further apart. Shame on our politicians. Shame on the public figures who perpetuated this division during this time. Horrifying. This is the first disaster I've been a part of where it pulled people farther apart. And I've been a part of many, many, many disasters. Again, that's how I made my bread and butter for many years. It didn't. It actually made me sad and fearful for our country that we couldn't pull together. Couldn't agree on the most simplest things. Put petty squabbles aside. On that note about government and petty squabbles and stuff like that, we then have the overreaching restrictions the loss of freedoms and people willingly giving them up, freely giving them up, encouraging to give them up. This is not America. This is not being American. I mean, sure, 100% cloth masks are a joke. I call that the tiger stone, these cloth masks. If you don't know what a tiger stone is, it is the idea in India when the British were coming in and colonizing and whatnot, their troops would get mauled by tigers. So there would be these shaman who would have these stones, and they'd sell them to the soldiers. They say these stones protect against the tigers. Well, how does that work? And of course, they'd be in the middle of the jungle selling these stones to these troops. So, well, do you see any tigers here? Did any tigers attack you in the area? Well, no, they didn't. Well, see, it's this stone. So they'd sell the stone to all the British soldiers and whatnot. Mind you, these guys knew what they were doing. They'd be in areas where tigers were not prevalent. They only sold them in the early morning when the tigers were off hibernating and whatnot. But these soldiers believed that because there were no tigers nearby, these stones were protecting them. That's how I view masks. They're a talisman. But that being said, again, we're in a disaster time, so I'll slap my mask on. Even before it became mandated, it's kind of a respect thing, to be polite thing. I'd slap my mask on. I'd tell people, of course, though, the gun on my hip is more protective than the mask on my face. So, excuse me, we see throughout our country, especially here in Michigan, the restrictions, the people giving up freedoms, not standing up for themselves, standing up for what many people have died for because of fear. No one's going to live forever. We all have a expiration date on our bodies. And it's amazing what we gave up for the idea, the tiger stone, that, it'll help keep us safe. I do firmly believe in 20, 30, 50 years, they'll do a retrospective study of all the measures we did and find how woefully ineffective they actually were. As you'll probably see on Facebook here, the 1 year anniversary of 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Yeah, we're still trying to flatten that curve. It's interesting. Sad. Very sad. But here we are, 1 year in. Many government officials are still threatening to keep these restrictions in place for another year. Even after they promised us, once the vaccine was out, we'd lift everything. Well, it's out. And we're still locking everything down, shutting down businesses. I can't even tell you how many friends I have that own businesses that are gone belly up or hanging on by their shoestrings, accruing God knows how much debt. Just try to stay open a little bit longer. Push it just a little bit longer. Sad, really is. So here we are, 1 year out. And yes, I was thinking about having one infamously named beers tonight, but I just can't stomach that light of a beer. Any beer that you have to add a lime to make it drinkable is not a beer in my opinion. Where do we go from here? I don't know. We're still keeping our preps nice and strong, looking towards the future, being very conservative in our finances, putting off a lot of improvements and projects and expenses we usually would have spent a few bucks on. Try and keep ourselves ready for what's coming next, which I don't know what that is. I fear for what that is. But not to end this one on a downer note. Again, if one thing this time has given me, really kind of put your faith in God. Let go. Know there is a plan. Know things will be all right. You'll come out on the other side. I've been through enough hard times in my life to know there is light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to get to that tunnel. You have to get through that dark, dark tunnel and you'll see the light. It'll be there. And you may only be able to enjoy the warmth of that light for a short time before something else throws you back in the tunnel. But that light is awesome. Just sit there and bathe in it. I thank God for that. I thank Him for giving me the strength to get through all this. So, I guess I'll leave you here now as I sit here in the garage finishing this very dark cigar and a dark beer with it's keeping its head on it. Good job. So I'll leave you with that. Hope. That's the one thing we didn't give a lot of people during this time. A lot of fear, tons and tons of fear was shot into the United States, into every American. I'm not going to perpetuate that. I want to perpetuate hope. Have hope. Things will get better. We won't get to this new norm. We'll get back to norm. We will persevere. We will survive. We will go on. We'll be better and stronger from what we've been through. I know that for a fact. We just have to keep going. It's a sucky thing to say, but it's true. We just have to keep persevering and going on. So, if you are dealing with some mental problems, some psychiatric problems, please go and seek it out. Seek out some help. There's no shame in it. Talk to someone. I highly recommend it. I know I'm not done talking to people to keep my mental health in check. Again, probably a video coming up excuse me, on that topic here soon. There's one thing I can leave you with. I want to leave you guys with hope. It will get better and we will get through this. Anyway, that's all I got for tonight. Long video. I'm going to air this one, probably to my detriment, but it's for me, and that's what this whole series is about. So stay safe out there, and we'll see you on the next one.